update. Last time I was here was April 12th, so it's
You're gonna have to, oh, wait, what number are you? Sorry, exactly. Okay, sorry, continue.
Last time I was here, I believe it was another joint session, work session with the school board and council, and that was April 12th. Gave you an update then, and one of the things in particular was kind of my crystal ball and where things were looking from a COVID standpoint, and how things were starting to open up. We were also seeing a lot of uncertainty in the construction market as a whole. And unfortunately, I think a lot of that has occurred now. We're realizing it, we're seeing it on jobs that are going out to bid, job estimates for jobs that are about to go out to bid, and then also.
Just keep going. You're fine.
We can hear you.
Okay, and of course, as I alluded to back in April, the contractor on board is suffering a lot of costs that, he can't really recoup. Unfortunately, it doesn't stop him from trying. And, every opportunity he gets to submit another proposal for additional funds, while we're continuing to try to reduce costs and request credits on some things by not doing them. We're getting proposals that are like 30% on the dollar kind of thing. It just makes no sense whatsoever. And we don't, other than just not doing it, not taking those credits, we don't have a whole lot of leverage on those types of things. So it's very real.
Just
Talk about that. So you're saying what he's doing, what the contractor's doing, we would have something, you said, we just won't do that. We won't
credit to the project.
because that costs so much more now, I'm only giving you 30% credit or something.
We're not telling us that.
Right,
We're
that's
seeing, we're
fact.
seeing it in the numbers, and there's no easy way to, I mean, a perfect example is we considered not doing the bump out along 12th Street. That was the perfect deal, and it's not a big addition there, but it's about 1,200 square feet total, I want to say. It's kind of pricey based on where it is, but if you just use the cost per square foot in stage things very differently. They keep going inside and coming back outside with more material stone. It has not been efficient for them. As you can see from this photo, or an entry, this left now, obviously, in 12th Street and Staples in the rear. And this is the new entrance that's been cutting into the hillside coming into the building. I think it's really worked out well the way that approaches. You should provide plenty of staging with double loaded cars coming into the site. All the major site utilities have been connected to the building now. That haven't been, the water line doesn't be flushed yet, but all those connections have been made. You can see here, this is the new second grade addition. Again, all the walls are up, no steel in the roof. This courtyard here, you'll see other photos of that concrete work is moving along pretty well. I didn't point out my other photo, but this is the chimney swift tower over here. That, for two reasons, we suspended the work on that, the brickwork. Number one, we don't have brick yet. Number two is a couple nesting pairs actually came to it right now and are actually living in it, and nobody anticipated that, so it's kind of neat that is going to work.
They're tired of waiting.
I guess so.
That's amazing with as much light is coming in that chimney.
That's true, and just the noise and other activity
Mhm.
too. Again, you can get it slightly different angle around the site here, two different shots. And what the area I was talking about with that small addition, we tried to get a price, was gonna be right on the end here, looking out towards Robertson. But we are moving forward with that.
But there is still a connector that goes between that building and the other building,
Yes,
sort of
and-
curved connector, so
and
you weren't talking about that piece being removed.
That's a necessary programmatic component.
Right.
That's the kindergarten wing
Right.
that's going through there.
And that was framed in as of this morning.
That's right. The footings are in there right now, so just kind of some overall shots of it. But one of the things I really want to stress, and I think everybody had a chance to see this morning, is, we've gutted this entire building, other than the shell itself. So everywhere you look, there's conduit and sprinkler and ductwork, and we can't put it under the slab. We can't put it through the walls. We got concrete vents that are the main structural pieces that we can't cut through. So in a lot of areas, we were planning on having ceilings. In other areas, we wanted to have exposed ceilings, but some of them, I think we really need to consider getting some additional ceilings added in some of the classroom spaces, because it's spaghetti. I mean, if it were higher ceilings, we could paint it all out one color, and I don't think it'd be an issue, but some of the classrooms concern me that there's just too much there. This will all be painted down the corridors. We are able to open those ceilings up all the way, so getting that natural light in, open these clear story windows into the classrooms. But this will be exposed. It'll be painted in accent colors and that sort of thing. But where you see the change to the square duct, there actually will be a ceiling here coming out of the page. We try to dress up the ductwork and so forth where it will be exposed. This is the courtyard A, we're calling it. This is the former area that goes to the maintenance, to the old boiler area, where Mr. Green used to push the snow blower up and down through there. So we've retained that access, but provided an outdoor area on the rear of the gym for that sort of equipment. But this is fully enclosed now, and this whole area will be the second grade wing. This is the back of the former kitchen. So all that paving is in place now. And Friday, the steel showed up, so they started putting steel up. And this is a small feature that's coming off the corridor. It'll be a small breakout area here, poking into that corridor or that courtyard area. And then in a matter of a couple days, they already started putting the steel joists up. So they are trying to move along as fast as they can. This is the metal decking. Oops, so that's
So help me figure this out. So I know you were mentioning that there was a potential price increase that we were kind of bartering back and forth with. So they're putting it up. Has that been resolved, or are we still sort of in?
Well, we told them we're not paying for it.
I like it. Perfect. Okay.
Now, how that impacts other things and other proposals along the way. There's definitely a delay in the delivery that is not, there's nothing they can do about it. So there is a time implication here. And I'll touch on some of the other critical things.
So this looks like a lot of steel. Is that's in the classroom area or?
This is in the second grade classroom area. So the courtyard back here, that is actually behind these
Okay.
openings.
Oh.
So that roof's going in all along here.
So the steel needed for that addition will be in place. I guess the steel that's still up in the air is the steel for the kindergarten wing and the gym.
And the gym.
Yeah.
And all this was supposed to arrive 5 months ago.
Sure.
So 5 months of, and you can see how that impacted, the work that you can't do inside there because it's not dried in. So that has had a big impact on the project. This is the other L of the second grade wing. They just got all these joists in. This is the former exterior wall of the kitchen area right now, or the former kitchen. And you can see through these big openings into that courtyard that we were looking at before. Exterior of the gym, there's no brick on site. The brick was supposed to be here 4 months ago in February. It was promised to arrive on June 16th, still not there. So,
And how is the brick in regards to pricing? Are we still pretty?
We've not seen anything specific related to the cost of the brick, but it's really impacted
Just getting it.
the sequencing of construction, because you imagine building walls such as this, they have huge scaffolding. There's some of it here that's all motorized as you work your way up. Well, as you do one wall, you come back down and you start with your brickwork. Well, I have to disassemble all that and move it to
Right.
different areas. This is the inside of the gym. It's looked like this for, I'd say, well, since April, mid-April.
If steel remains an issue, what alternatives do we have?
It's coming. I mean,
Okay.
It is on order. It is coming. The latest that we heard is that the gym was going to be one of the first things completed. It's now probably going to be one of the last things, and they're going to use the gym space for storage of materials and things
Okay.
like that. So we're going to hear more about that on the meeting we have scheduled later this week.
But from a practical point, and while it's not ideal, if the gym were the only piece still holding us up, and we had to occupy McCark if everything else was done, that's feasible, correct?
Would you still have an active construction site? Yeah, you're saying it would be.
Well,
It would be really difficult.
Originally, part of this was that we might have to be in there while there were still parts of it being worked on.
Well, that's true, but I think we have to see the overall sequence of what they think that can be. I believe they're going to prioritize more of the site here now, because those things are not delayed with materials. But at the same time, when you're bringing in cranes to put the steel in place, you don't want to be driving over finished parking lots and so forth. So
And full of
there's a
teacher
lot to
cars
it.
and,
Yeah,
'cause-
yeah, and cars, exactly. This is that connector. You can see the fins from the old gym here. You see a little bit of the old sign still there. And then these are going to be large toilet rooms that are being added outside of the gym and in the big public lobby area. And then the back here is part of the new kitchen area. This is the other courtyard. So 12th Street is right out here, and this is that curved portion that will connect this building back to this end that you asked about earlier today. That's kindergarten wing. So that half a slab was just poured last week, and the other part through here will be later. And you can see the foundation and stem wall for the corridor here, where that ties into the building, and then out further, following that same radius, will be the exterior classroom wall. This is looking into that same addition. On the other side of that window there is 12th side is going to be the former library, media room. The other is the STEM lab area, and we have other breakout areas within the corridors that will be better defined by ceiling space. And this is looking right outside of that window. Here's Robertson Street right there, and you can see the footprint of that addition to dress up the front of the building. Just a few shots left here. All, as I said, all the site utilities are in. The bases for the new site lighting are in place. The road rough grading is there. These photos were taken 2 weeks ago. You can see there's the grass isn't established here yet, but as of this morning, it's all in place. And it really came in pretty well considering the lack of rain that we had. I was surprised how well that has taken hold. And then just where that intersection is with Staple Street, it's a very wide exit onto the road. You can see looking back in there. So, quick summary of from a visual standpoint of the progress of the project as a whole. On April 12th, I presented these milestone dates overall. First few were just a historical chronology here, and then what we were anticipating. This was due to what we were looking at in terms of weather delays at the time. But we were looking at the fact that we could go through the fall, turn things over late fall, be able to get furniture in place, and then teachers setting up and ready to be back in the school by January. Unfortunately, from what we've been hearing and taking into account the steel delays and the brick delays, I'm sorry, I got ahead of myself here, but so right now the weather days are right at 40. We're looking for a little more substantiation on that and how it's impacted their critical path. The big problem for Avis is showing us what the critical path is, because they've had to turn everything around because of the delays with getting the steel. Well, the contractor submitted his bid, agreeing to complete the project in a certain amount of time. In that time, they have to do whatever it takes to do it. It may require some overtime, it may be duplicating efforts, multiple crews, those sorts of things. And if they don't do it by that time, this project actually has liquidated damages in it. So every day beyond that date, that's not a justified delay, they could potentially be at risk for paying, I forget what are they $500 a day? I'm trying to remember. Varies on projects. But as part of their schedule, their calendar days, so it counts Saturday and Sunday, they need to take into account what the National Ocean Atmospheric Oceanic NOAA, that group, they post data for this region that in January there might be 20 normal working days, and you can expect bad weather in 4 or 5. So they need to expect that. So we're not going to give them those 4 or 5 days. But if there's January and then, as you recall, February, we got a bunch of snow out of the blue. You recall the baseball field at RU, we were working on that, and they're 90% done, and we got 2 weeks worth of snow. So these 40 days are over and above what should be anticipated based on the NOAA data. And then they have to show that it impacted their critical path. So if they could have been doing work somewhere else that didn't impact the critical path. So it does get complicated though, because again, the critical path has been a very dynamic feature of the schedule. But as I said, the delivery of the steel was expected 5 months ago. Pieces of it have started coming. We can't all arrive at one time, because not only do you have to store it, but ordinarily they like to take it off the truck and put it in place, or take it off the flatbed. You got to have the access around the site to do those things, so they can't just drop it all off at one time. The brick, I mentioned how that impacted that delay. It was supposed to be here in February. We still haven't seen any yet, and it was promised 16th. And then finally, just the workforce and the labor and trying to get more crews on site. They tried to accelerate some of the interior work, but they just don't have the people available to do it. So it really, I mean, they're unprecedented times. I'm happy to see the funds that are being injected into the economy and how much it can help, particularly related to infrastructure and the other needs within not only the schools, but just our everyday life. But it's all coming at one time, and it's a real flood. So those are the things that are impacting our schedule. So if I go back to the April 12th milestone date, what we're hearing is that could push back to March right now, which means moving in May, giving time for FF&E to be placed and assembled, those fixtures, furniture, equipment, that kind of thing. And then hopefully plenty of time for the teachers to get set up in the classroom, that they'll be back in and ready to go by mid-August 2022. This isn't final, it's not formal. This is what's been.
It's a realistic projection, though, based on what we're seeing.
Discussions, I mean, even if we could shave 2 months off of this,
Right.
it would be in March.
Yeah.
We're not going to stop school at one
Right.
school and move to the
Where are we at with the mobile?
Well, that's their question, because we got a,
Mobile classrooms for 6 more months then.
Right. So I hope to have, we were hoping to have that meeting earlier today, but it got moved to Thursday, July 1st. And Rob and Thompson, Liddon, and Davis are going to have, about 10 people sitting down and looking through schedules and change orders and extension requests and those sorts of things, and see what's justified. As I said, there is some possibility that there could be some damages. Just keep in mind that if we force them to do something here, it's like squeezing a balloon. It's going to pop out somewhere else, right? So we're trying to be fair and reasonable and hold them to what their contract is. But and I do think they have been trying to rework the schedule over and over again. There's really nothing they don't have leverage to get the steel to the site. It's just not in the plans. So to answer your question, I've kind of put a worst case scenario budget together as of today. So up here, I made that 8 additional months for rental. The last time I think I shared it was at 4 when we thought it was going to go through the fall. So thinking we got to go through the spring, I did bump that up to 8 months. And there may be negotiating room also with the trailers, just because of how extended it is, or I know there's even discussions of possibly even buying a couple of the trailers for other purposes maybe. So there are some options there. Since the last budget, we had a number of change order proposals that still needed to be evaluated. We did execute a change order 5. That included some of the additional items and funds related to the Swift Tower and some of the monies that were able to be applied from the COSER ESSER funds. They come with some pretty strict restrictions. I mean, they can only be used for things related to like HVAC, or they did allow us to add additional roof replacement because if you follow the path, a leaky roof could lead to indoor air quality issues, so it's justified. So it's one of the legitimate uses of using those funds. So if we go all the way down through, we're looking, we've gone back and forth with Davis, and right now there's about $156,000 of a multitude of items, including credits. One of the ones that we recently requested was changing the main driveway paving from a heavy-duty paving to a regular-duty paving, and retaining heavy-duty where the bus loop is and where the loading docks are. And we got a price for that. It was significantly lower than we expected it to be, and we believe we found an error in their formula too, in their quantity. So we're expecting as much as $20,000 more credit on that one item. it could be a big dollar item, but that's rolled into that pending COPs right now. I hate to say this, but it's certainly not our fault that this, what the construction environment is, but to provide a whole nother year's worth of construction phase services, it's been significant effort on Thompson Litton, just dealing with the scrutiny of all the change order proposals and the negotiating with our contractors and on site on a much more frequent basis than normal. But again, projecting sort of a worst case scenario there. These funds haven't been expended yet. Obviously we haven't paid that yet. Haven't done this. We don't know what that final number is, but if all those things are done, taking into account the additional COVID CARES Act funding and the Jimmy Swift funds, it shows that we'd be in the hole right now at $60,000. So I guess I go back to when the budget was initially approved, or not the budget, but the approval to move forward with construction in August of last year. We were looking at a contingency of 3%, and I know I was asked very straightforward, can we do it for that? And I was pretty optimistic then, but obviously that's not the case. A renovation project is usually going to see a contingency close to 10%. I hope we could make things work with a 5% contingency, but there's still a lot of things being uncovered. As I mentioned, some of the classrooms, we'd like to go back and get some ceilings in there where we thought they could be exposed. We have been working with Rob's group and the school board, things that we've taken out of the project to date. Some of these things were early on before we really started seeing that reduced value for those things. There's the paving that I said we're waiting on that final pricing, but we've taken these things out. We've changed control systems and, things. Some of these could be added in the future, like some of the turf that would go in the courtyard area, that sort of thing. But again, we've been trying a lot of different ways to keep costs under control. And then here's a number of things that never even made it into the project that ordinarily you'd probably be seeing these things in most projects. And I know we're going to have to deal with the stage curtain. They made calls to have it removed, and they said, well, you're better off leaving it in place and then try cleaning it later, because if you take it down, you'll never get it back up. It's 50-some years old, and it's in really rough shape. I know for the most part it's used as a backdrop most of the time. It doesn't function as an actual stage curtain. But things like, again, some of the classrooms where we thought we could leave those exposed, I think when you see those spaces, you'll realize that I think some ceilings back in there will be the thing to do. Kind of grim news, but it is unprecedented times, and I do think, considering, we're still, and if you look at, and I do have copies of that budget there, very sorry, but I have to pass those around so you can read them. Goes around in each direction. But, the percentage of
I'll get one more thing.
of changes so far is, we're still under 3%, and that includes the items that were added, that additional roof work and additional HVAC work. So if we didn't count those items, the total of all the change orders is a little over 1% more than the construction costs.
And do the pending COPs include or not include the potential refund credits?
They are in there right now. That $20,000 one I mentioned, that has not been identified as, and that's not. So that whole total, that 3% at this point, I'd be pretty happy with it. And again, not including the additional CARES funding, it really is a little over 1%. So it's just a function of what we're dealing with in the economy, and the whole country's dealing with it, and like worldwide, I guess.
Can we talk through just a couple of things? So from your cloudy crystal ball, based on the unofficial revised timeline, do you feel like that is a realistic projection with what we know about the steel orders that are likely coming this way and the materials that are needed to get us at least to a place of function?
Knowing that steel arrived last week, parts of it,
That
I
helps.
feel much better. And I'm hoping our meeting on Thursday will confirm a lot of these things. You know, the brick is pretty important too, as you can imagine, because you
Sure.
can't set windows without the brick either. I mean, the window frames have to bridge that gap between the block and the brick. If they can tell me it's coming very soon, I feel pretty comfortable with that projected schedule that shows us completing by, end of spring.
Because, I mean, one of the things with this is, the big rush to get it done within a certain amount of time is some of the other ancillary costs that are associated. And certainly we want to have this done in a timely fashion, but if we're going to have to rent the trailers or buy trailers or whatever the decision is made to get through the end of the school year, at that point, we have a window of 2 or 3 months, if we had to get some things done. And that's the only thing that concerns me. My biggest concern is, is this project, feasible to get done, so we're not talking about this a year from now, that we're still 3 months, 6 months, 9 months out, whatever the case may be. And then B, identifying where these costs are and where the revenue is going to be to support them. So that's really the piece. Like we talk about bricks and windows, say on the gym, for example. Worst case scenario, if that got pushed further to last summer, a lot of the other things for the building could take place to get us ready to go, right? I mean, I'm just trying to think through how this.
Yeah, I mean, we've occupied buildings under full construction before. That was kind of the initial plan here, when we tried to expedite the schedule and do the multiple bid packages early on with getting the
Sure.
the trailers and removing that hazardous material. But you're right, I think there's a way to work around it. I mean, obviously, it could be very inconvenient, but you could
Sure.
still do it. I mean,
But it can get us to a place where we could function as a school should we need to. I'm just thinking, that removes $100,000 potentially in cost in the future that we're not
yeah,
prepared for.
beyond
Right.
next summer, yes.
Right. With these trailers, 8 additional months rent altogether, if we were talking about purchase at this point, what would that look like?
$800,000.
So that's quite a big difference.
Yeah.
No, we just sent an estimate to them to ask if we could purchase 4 and then rent 8.
Okay.
So I haven't heard from them.
So 112 would not reflect, is that reflecting just renting 8?
No,
That's
that's just,
Renting 12.
That's renting 12.
For
That's
8
renting.
months.
So that could potentially be $30,000, $20,000 difference.
probably not, because we'd have to purchase the 4.
Right, but that might be a different identified pool of money for how those might be used in the future moving forward, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
So, of course, this is kind of the concern, I think David and I reflected at the beginning of this is what happens when we bump up to a budget, right? Because it is unprecedented times, and I hate to be in an echo chamber, but I remember saying that. But I will also say on the positive side of that, so I'm not Debbie Downer all the time in regards to budget, the one thing, and this is more to council, is what we did see is we had some savings in regards to some of the rates that we received. And so I do feel like that perhaps gives us a little bit of this buffer and this wiggle room that we needed. It's sort of built in by the negatives of the economy and building that you're talking about. We saw some of that cost savings as a benefit. So I agree. I think it could have been worse, and I have to be honest, I was very concerned that it could potentially be worse just because of all the unknowns. I do like to see that you do have a list of things that, you know, are tangible that you're looking at, maybe dropping out of the build to save money. I know that was something that was really important. You know, I know to me, I wanted to make sure that if we had to back things out, just depending on where this all went later on. And so I was glad to see, I think there was a concerted effort by all parties to back some of those things out where it was logical. Obviously, there are some areas that maybe you thought were logical, you're learning may not be so logical, but, so I guess that's kind of my 2 cents on it at this point. I mean,
How confident are you at this point about that $60,000 overage after the additional money gets put in there? I mean, is it truly just a guessing game right now? And it
Yeah,
could
I
be
mean, that's just what
100,000?
we know today.
Okay.
I mean,
But that's anticipating
I think if we could,
the delays and the things that we've already got in the system. It would just be as if there's something additionally catastrophic that might add to this. Is that an accurate way to look at that?
yes, but there are a few things, like, as I mentioned, the ceilings. I think we're gonna wanna add those back into the project. I don't have a price for that, but my fear is, you know, we're being so frugal and so bare bones that when we're done with the end product, someone's gonna say, you spent how much and this is what we got, you know? Some of those things that are really seen by everybody. And I don't wanna see us in that position. I don't want anyone.
I think, you know, we all want a build that's aesthetically appealing to our students. That's very important. But I think we really just have to get down the road. We almost have to kick the
Well,
can to
I
some
think,
extent.
I think we have to talk about what you're talking about with that. If you're saying there may be additional expenditures, what does that look like? Where have we identified money to pay for that? And then what are we looking at? Because we're already higher than we had anticipated going in the first place. So I think that's the real key. If you're talking about adding those ceilings, and obviously you don't have a number necessarily for us, I mean, that's a piece that we would have to have a discussion about, right? I mean, that's.
You know, I think it's really important to put this in perspective. Last Tuesday in the Vermont Times, there was an article about the renovation of William Byrd High School. I don't know how many of you saw that. William Byrd High School was projected, their renovation was projected to be $27.5 million. They're looking at a $7 million increase. The fact that we are talking about a $69,000 gap, let's put this in perspective.
Well, that would not have been a great conversation to bring back to this council, because we've been very direct that we're bumping up to a budget at the
Every,
max. So we have to
every
be-
school
so I don't-
division
I don't
that's
like that
built,
euphemism.
it's a perspective, and
This
every
council
school
wouldn't
division
have
that
gone with
has put a building up or is doing a renovation this year is facing this,
Right.
approximately 27% increase.
And those communities have larger budgets and larger tax bases to draw upon.
They do.
And so we don't. We are going to the taxpayers with our handout, so we have to be very conscientious. We don't have that tax base. We are a very small city. And so that's fine, but I don't feel it's relevant to this conversation, because I can show you where people came into budget somewhere in the nation too. So I want to stay focused on this and how we do our very best as a team to provide what we need for our students. And I guess, Mayor, what I was saying about kicking some of this down the road a little ways is because what I'm hearing you say is, if it's feasible, and we don't know the real feasibility because we're still in this ambiguous area of build and resources to build, you know, we may get down the road and it's just too cost prohibitive to look at the ceilings, because there's it's just too cost prohibitive.
I have some questions about that, though. If we're talking about like a drop ceiling, I don't know what kind of ceiling we're talking about for this. I assume it would be like a drop type ceiling or something that would be just a cover, essentially.
For those,
things. That's not that hard to retrofit to something should we choose to do that. That while it might be a challenge during construction, easier during construction, it's not an
possibility to come back and add.
additional ceiling later if we chose to do that.
And we have ceilings in a lot of the other areas, but there's probably a dozen or so classrooms that
Right.
we tried to retain that form
Sure.
from before, and it's just, it's not looking right.
I mean.
Yeah.
So I can hear from the other
Is
council
it more regarding aesthetics, is in terms of adding drop ceiling, is it functional? I guess why the drop ceiling, is this purely
It's
aesthetics?
It's
Okay.
primarily
Okay.
aesthetics.
So you could do a summer project and knock it out. If
Well,
later, if the
I
money
mean,
was there, but.
Have you seen what some of those kids might do? You know how high they can jump?
You
I
go
mean,
on
to
basketball
me,
team, they can
how-
jump
I
out.
was going to say, to me, it's more than aesthetics, I think it's safety.
Can I just make one comment?
Sure.
That there may be some things that are for aesthetics that we could choose to put off until later when it comes to safety and when it comes to usability for our staff and for our students. I think that's where, when costs are coming in that are above and beyond
Agreed.
what we expected, I want it to look nice, of course, but I want it to be safe, and I want it to be something, so when you're talking about somebody coming into the building and saying, this is what we paid for, I want our teachers to be able to walk in and say, this is the classroom I need to be able to teach my children, as opposed to a parent walking in and saying, I don't like the color scheme, or I would wish there was a sunshade or something. I want it to be safe and useful.
Well, with this though, how much of those safety-related pieces are
Right.
already built into this? I mean, are there things that are additions that you feel like you need that are not reflected here at this point?
Well, I'll say, like I said before, if we knew what it was gonna be,
Sure.
we wouldn't need a contingency.
Right.
I realize that the funds are, I know what the situation is.
we've already taken things out that concern me about safety.
Oh, me
That
too.
concern me about learning
Absolutely.
environment. I mean, the classroom audio upgrade that we took out is extremely significant for our children.
Yeah.
Extremely significant. The shading equipment on the playground, extremely significant. You're looking at overheating of children. On a day like today, if they're out with recess, there's overheating possibilities. Let's see, what else do we have? The window, removal of the window shades in the gym, you're gonna increase the heat there in the gym. So you're looking at utility expenditures going up. The artificial turf in Courtyard A, that's a huge safety issue.
Yeah.
So
But
we're-
can we all agree, just due to these unprecedented times, that, as Councilman Barres said, that some of these, just depending, again, I mean, very murky ball we're looking into in regards to the future, but, I think that there are some summer projects that would be a priority that we could look at. But I don't feel comfortable in saying that right now, just because I don't know, there's just so much that we don't know. So I agree very much with what you're saying. We want usability, we want functionality, those are really our top priorities. I absolutely understand what you're saying. There's a product that people are investing in, and this children, we want it to be an aesthetically appealing environment. I want that too. So I just think, it sounds like we're all sort of saying the same thing. Like, if I'm not mistaken, that some of this, we just have to see.
Try and insert something for the sake of the work, the civility, and we're working together. And I think we all know each other well enough to be perfectly honest. We bring you what we feel is our bare bones. We leave here feeling lectured many, many times. We don't hear from everybody on city council, and I mean that with the utmost respect. We are not going to bring you anything that we don't think we've cut bare bones. Our passion is our children. Your passion is a fair budget to your city, of which all of us are taxpayers. I get that. I think if we sit here and say, you said this, we said that, you said this, you said that, we are going nowhere. This is what we have now. We cannot project what, as Jack says, what's going down the road. Let's pull together and share what are we going to do going down the road. Let's not sit here and beat that same drum over and over again. And I don't mean it disrespectfully. You've got a huge burden on your back. I know that. Just the thought of raising the taxes, you went through a lot with. And I appreciate everything you're doing, and I do. But we're wasting time and energy. I would love to hear what Forrest has to say. I would love to hear what you have to say. I'm not fussing at you two, but I'm telling
Well,
you,
but
this
I'm
is
gonna
the
tell
way
you,
I feel.
I'm,
I want to hear
that's,
from other people.
and when there's a point I feel that I need to make, I'm gonna make it, because this is a
We're
work
hearing you.
session.
We're hearing
And
you,
so,
Jessie.
I don't wanna be lectured at either.
But that's what we continually
So-
get lectured.
Okay.
Let's move forward.
From our additional council members who have not had an opportunity to participate, are there thoughts?
I have questions.
Thank you.
Jack, last time that you were here, you came in and you said, we're digging down and we're seeing cardboard and this is the problem, and you can project based on new things that we're finding that the budget is gonna change. Are we now past the point where we should expect those surprises? Or could there be more?
I think there can be more. I think the majority of them are done. The foundations are in now in both additions, the roadwork's in, all the utilities are connected. There's a stormwater detention system underneath the old parking lot. I mean, some big things have been done, but if you were to ask me today, I mean, this shows what I know today. I would say,
I'm not
think-
asking, I'm gonna ask you about supplies, labor shortage, but in terms of the bones, the actual structural supplies.
well, there's things that are still being worked out in terms of, if you recall, the roof overhangs that were formerly the plastic corrugated plastic. And we're trying to figure out a good way to resolve it. The contractor's working with us. We've gone down a couple roads and, there's gonna be some changes to that. And it's just, it's hard to draw every single little detail when you're pulling together all these different disparate components. So there are gonna be some more. I'm pretty confident that, what they are, I don't know, but I'm confident there will be. And if you were to ask me today, I would say, that says 60. I think, so we're not doing this again in 2 months. I think you gotta think $200,000. That's kind of off the top of my head, but.
Jack, leading me to my next question. My next question is for school board, and because I can't read your minds, what do you all need? What's the timeline, so that we can start having conversations about what we can do, and what we can do, if we can do anything. We want to be honest, I need to know what you're asking for.
Absolutely. I agree.
That's what I need.
We need Jack's recommendation.
Thank you.
And not that Dr. Altieri needs me to back her up, but I think the project that she was talking about is a project that's in construction, that it wasn't coming as, we need to bump our budget up. They're like over a barrel because it's in construction and they're facing that $7 million increase. And I don't know
So when
any.
you're saying 200,000, are you saying, like, we're looking at this, and we're looking at this 60,000? Are you saying you think realistically to bump that up
Yeah.
to 200?
Forrest, what are your thoughts or questions?
So I think especially the last thing Naomi, well, obviously everything Naomi said, but especially that last part is kind of where I was feeling as well. As I want to get a clearer picture of what school board, clear communication of what school board needs, and I would like to just speak directly to what the frustration you are expressing there, and I appreciate that. I'm still pretty new here to the city. I'm coming up on a year now.
I understand.
But the way I operate, and it's different from, I think we all operate differently. So just so you know, moving forward, how I operate as a person typically is, especially for meetings like this, I absorb the information. And sometimes I'll have questions that come to mind. But if I'm sitting here quiet, it's not because I'm not thinking through things. It's not because I don't care. It's not because I'm bored. I'm very much a thinker, so I absorb the information, I think through it, and try not to rush to hasty decisions or just perspectives.
I respect that a lot.
So just so you understand, that's kind of where I'm coming from. And this is a work session. We aren't making, as I understand, we aren't making real decisions tonight. And so for me, it's really important to just absorb all the information. And so as I've been sitting here quietly, my main mood has been frustration, and it has nothing to do with any of the people around this table.
Me too. I
Yeah.
feel the same way.
So the frustration I'm feeling is like, it's like so close, and we're having to nitpick on little nitty-gritty things, and we're having to speculate on the unspeculable. And so I have no frustration with anyone in this room, and I appreciate everyone and the work that everyone's doing. And so I agree with Councilwoman Vice Mayor Huntington that I think we need some good communication to make sure we're all on the same page moving forward. We all have the same goal. And I think generally we all have the same cares and concerns. As you mentioned, I think we have the same priorities. I think the priorities just are in different orders. School board
just how to
members
get
versus
there.
city council,
It's how to
yeah.
get there.
But ultimately, we have the same goals, and so I hope that at least helps you understand where I'm
It
coming
does.
from. Okay,
It does. And thank you very much for sharing that.
absolutely.
Manassas, any questions or thoughts on that?
I think I voiced most of my concerns and thoughts. Like I think I'm probably one of few, Jack knows, I've been on a lot of construction projects in my past life. So I get it, things change. You know, you have contingencies that you plan for, but then guess what? You find an underground storage tank of old gas that you just didn't know was there, right? And so those things happen. So I think Forrest alluded to it. We have two different components, right? We have a city fiduciary responsibility as a city, taxes, budgets. We want you want to deliver the best product for our students, right? So I think we're pushing towards the same goal on opposite ends, right? So we're pushing, and what happens? No movement, right? You don't have any movement when you're pushing towards the same goal, but from different ends of the spectrum. So this work session is what it is, a work session. I hate that frustrations are involved in it, because emotions, I think we're all emotionally involved in this and invested in it, because my kids go to school here, so I do want the best.
You want
Exactly.
Absolutely.
My kids go to school here. I pay taxes here, so I'm on a taxpayer. I'm a city councilman. I'm a parent. I want all of them. But at the same time, we have a fiduciary responsibility as city council. You have responsibilities as a school board to ensure that we give the students the best product that we can give them. So I think the best thing we can do is lean upon Jack's years and years of knowledge, right? That's the best thing we can do as far as our approach, and let's continue down the course of leaning on Jack for his guidance and his knowledge, and use that to make our decisions. So I think that's where we should go.
Rob,
What have you all identified within the
current school budget that might support some of this?
As far as helping pay,
Yeah.
we have put 59,000 in bipolar ionization with all of our classrooms, and 168 in the new roofs. And then I'll give you all this. I know it sounds like that we have a lot of money coming into schools, but we really don't.
Thank you for your comments. That's such a
So this is on the first page there, just as you see, the project costs prior to the pandemic, and then we have the cost that we have, and you all have seen those that has been our priorities summarized for years. We actually have the McCarty project going, so we're really excited about that, and you all are helping us, paying for that. But we still have the Innovation Center, we have the Radford High School labs and facelift. The items that are in red are safety issues for us. The track, bleachers, concession stands, and tennis courts, and the multipurpose field. We are putting $100,000 of carry forward money to a tennis, to try to help the tennis court. It has, the players are tripping on it right now from the cracks, so it's in bad shape. I'll talk to you about the Arnheimer House, and of course we have the Bell Heath debt service, $400,000 every year for another 20 years, I think. Carrie, is that right? Or 17 maybe?
Something like that,
I think that's there. So then you can go to the projects and costs post-pandemic. We've really seen a huge need for almost individual or small group student transportation, and really helping our buses, because we couldn't put like one or two to a seat on a bus, so we had to purchase 5 vehicles and a 10-passenger car for that. Our cafeteria and kitchen need AC more than anything, and you can see the cost of that. It's $875,000 because this estimated $875,000 because of the the age of the school and what they have to do to put these huge units, I've just seen the drawings on top of a structure that may not be able to hold them. We're not sure about that yet. The locker rooms we've talked to you all about them, you've been in them, you've seen them. The gymnasium, you know, these, and we're using our ESSER funds for those. The classroom ventilators, we think we can take care of those individually. The King Center, we're not sure we can get that done yet. The school board office, the same thing. The high school science rooms are still being developed. Those are ancient, and we can't do any labs with them right now at all. We need to replace the HVAC unit at the RHS administrative office. That's going on right now. That's $63,000 using ESSER funds. We have to get another school bus. Let me back up to the Arnheim house is a huge need for us, but it's $3+ million to renovate that in order for us to bring students into it. The school bus of $100,000 is needed in order for us to try to get our children at school at a better time. So they're not all coming at 7:30 is awfully early in the morning. You have children standing out at 6:50 in the dark. The engineering stuff and Jack and the folks over there at Thompson Linton cut us a great deal on that. We're using our CARES Act money for that. And then we've seen some success in the other school divisions with outdoor classrooms. That's probably a low number, $100,000, because some of these outdoor classrooms are really, really good. And then you can see, I won't go over the instructional portion of this. We have to designate 20 to 25% of our monies for all these funds to instruction. We're doing about 40% because we feel like that's a huge, huge need for us. So you can see there that the total that we have is, you know, for our expenses is 41 million. The total that we spent or are going to spend is about 20 million with your all's help. So we still need about 21 million for some other of these projects. And I don't want to be the Debbie Downer either, but.
Well,
that's
and
just
I
facts.
appreciate some of the aspirational projects that are here, and they're things we would love to do, but realistically, 12 million maybe of this is aspirational. That's not something that we have to do. It's certainly something we would love to do.
No, the things in red are the ones that are are priorities.
Okay. And of those, do you have like a 1, 2, 3, 4, like?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
And what's, you have that now?
So the cafeteria, right now, the cafeteria and kitchen are the main priority, and we're
One,
waiting
okay.
to see what the estimate is before we move forward with any, because the other thing that we have till 2024 to hold these funds, and we're really worried about what may happen next year
Oh, I see.
with the pandemic and, you know, maybe being in person or maybe not being in person, or, you know, who knows?
Okay. So, all HVAC issues are 1, 2, and 3? Locker room, gymnasium, or what's?
So the 1, 2, and 3 would be the cafeteria and
Kitchen,
the locker room, and then the gymnasium.
3, okay.
The gymnasium, and part of the expense of these, Jack, correct me if I'm wrong here, is once you make so if we put in a door, there's a door to the girls' locker room, or we could put a door into the girls' locker room that would access storage a lot quicker. But if you do that, then you have to make the entire locker room ADA accessible. And that's a huge expense too. So anytime we make a construction update to the gym, for say, if we want to put bleachers in the gym, we have to make the gym entirely ADA accessible. So that's why you see a lot of the high cost of these things. But right now, we can't have a student in the girls' locker room that may be in a wheelchair, may have some type of disability, to use that. They have to use it, which isn't fair to them. You know, unfortunately, it's covered by the grandfather clause of the American Disability Act, but, you know, anytime we make a change, we're gonna have to update everything.
So for priorities 1, 2, and 3, it's about $2 million-ish, somewhere in that neighborhood. And it looks like with our end-of-the-year funds and our ESSER funds, and I'm assuming the $2.7-ish million of this first section you've got here does not include any of these others with the 1.7 below. So altogether, it looks like there's about $4 million-ish in new funds there. So we should be able to do at least those 3 projects
I hope so.
with the money that's there.
I hope so.
The school bus with the money that's there.
The school bus has been purchased.
Right.
Okay.
The multipurpose field and the track bleachers, the tennis courts, we just resealed that a few years ago. What happened with that caused the cracking again?
We resealed them in 2009,
Okay.
so they.
So it's, and that's estimated to last about a decade, is that
Yeah,
what the thought
about
is?
10
So
every
that's a
10
regular
years.
cost that we should just-
Well, no, and ours too, Mayor, are on a portion of Bradford that has, when we did the resistivity study on it, there's caverns underneath it.
Right.
So when moisture gets underneath the tennis courts, it tends to make them separate, and then you have, what is it?
Approximate with that of the $2.5 million, how much is just the tennis courts?
Because I know the track, the bleachers and concessions are things we really want to do, but might be 2, 3, 4 years down the line if we had to.
We've got an estimate from the tennis courts for $70,000, but I think it'll be more close to
All right.
100.
Let's say it's 100,000. Okay.
So right now, with the things in red that we absolutely need to do, we're looking at $2.1 million or so, $2.2 million. And we've got about $4 million that we can count on to at least cover those things. Out of that $4 million, can we identify part of that money to cover the additional parts of a card and then see where we go to be able to then fund other things?
Did you
on
count the
list?
instructional monies down there too? Because those are included in.
Okay, well, let's say it's $2.6 million and you've got 2.1 or $2.2 million. That's still $400,000 that could be available from those funds that could potentially be that contingency that you need from a card.
And then we're pouring everything into, we're using all of our funds right now. And what happens if something happens?
Well, the way I look at that is, then we have to have another discussion moving forward, because that's the if we don't know.
But this is money we have, because to be able to do this realistically, we're going to have to ask for additional monies from our taxpayers to make that happen. Because we've got a lot of other things.
For $200,000, you're gonna have to ask for
Well,
that?
right now, we're looking at things at the fire department. We're looking at issues with roads and sidewalks. There are a significant number of capital priorities outside the school system that don't come close to $16 million. What I'm saying is, I think it's perfectly possible for us to go down this pathway, looking at the monies that are available with this blessing from the federal government, thank goodness we have it, to cover these costs that we have now. And then, as we go down this road, we will then have that discussion to say, unprecedented times still exist.
Let's do these things.
But that would be my suggestion, because that gets us there right now. If we go down
Another path, to be honest with you, I struggle
turning to people at some of our other areas and saying, we can't do your project because we still got to work on this. So that would be my suggestion, and I think I'm recognizing how fortunate we are even during challenging times. But I would rather address it with the monies that we have available now. And then when we come to that, maybe unknown, saying, okay, we're going to have to dip into these things, we're going to have to look at funds differently, we may have to come together as a community to have a serious discussion. But rather than have that serious discussion and take additional monies from taxpayers today and keep this in sort of a reserve, I would rather go that path. And again, part of this is we are preserving the reserve for the city for these very things. You guys are not required to preserve that same kind of reserve that we have to.
And I completely respect your
So-
opinion, but my job as superintendent of the schools is to protect our children.
Sure,
And to
absolutely.
advocate for our children, and that's what we're doing here, is advocating for our children, coming to ask you all for $200,000 a project. So I don't feel comfortable if that's what the board would decide. I think that's their decision, but I don't feel comfortable spending ESSER money on a project which we already are spending some on. We're spending already $200,000, or over $200,000, because that's what the ESSER money was intended for. The ESSER money was intended for learning loss and to help to renovate your current facilities, not ones that you are either completely redoing or building.
I think we'd be breaking them.
You have to.
Well,
the
McCarty
grant
is a
not-
current facility.
They're for current facilities. They're not for new facilities or facilities that are being. And
Are we sure of that, then?
Yes.
I would ask that question. to say,
Absolutely.
could this money be used?
We
for that?
have to write the grant and then have it approved. But they're not gonna, they'll pay for this, so we had to have the ceilings or the roofs, and we had to have bipolar ionization approved for those two things. We think maybe we could get the furniture approved, but again, I'm very uncomfortable spending money that's supposed to be used for learning loss and for our current facilities on a renovation project.
It's supposed to be COVID related.
It's COVID related.
It should be.
And we did not build McCard or renovate McCard because of COVID.
No, I get that.
But with approval, if they would approve it, then you're not breaking the law.
You're
So
not breaking the
if-
law, but you are
like
not
if you
using.
requested it.
You're not,
No.
and we do have, I mean, we're not asking you all, we're not asking the council to put in HVAC at the cafeteria. We're not asking council to put HVAC in our gyms. We recognize that's our responsibility.
Well, I recognize that we're fortunate to have this money in the first place. What I'm
Absolutely.
saying, though, is it makes sense to me, while you're saying you don't want to use it this way, it makes sense to me to use money that's available for us, if it is legal to do so, to cover these costs. And then if we get to needs that we have not anticipated, just like these are needs we've not anticipated, then we have that discussion about an increased budget for other things.
But if we're down,
I think we have to weigh it, excuse me.
Sorry, go ahead.
I think we have to weigh it that we're coming from the same place. You don't want to put your reserves dry. If we took all our carryover money, there's 100 different things that we've had in the past, and people that don't understand but just yak about, oh, well, they've got money to do this. You gotta realize, what was the cost of the boiler went?
Well, it's,
It's
and I think
$100,000,
if you want to do that, then you all need to take over the debt service for Bell Heath too, because we won't have the carry forward money for $400,000.
That most school divisions don't pay on their own to begin with.
Now, I don't want to get back down this path, but that was a deal made to get Bell Heath done back in the mid-2000s.
But that's in the past, but that's
But let's
it,
just
that's
say this,
just,
though, from my perspective, and I'm only one voice, we have other council members who can certainly weigh in, I think we have a path forward right here that could cover the cost of what we're being asked for. And then with these other things, other projects, other concerns, we can then come back to the table to say, we need to identify such and such and such and such down the road.
So you are asking us to break the guidelines for taking our ESSER money and put it into a capital project.
you're
It's a
asking us not to
capital
use the ESSER funds for what they're intended to use for.
I'm just suggesting that we have funding available, whether you take it from the CARES Act pool or the ESSER pool or whatever pool you're taking it from, to be able to facilitate some of these things that we need to do here that covers our needs
I understand.
and
but
gets
then
us
we-
where we need to go.
I'm assuming that the ESSER funds have to be segregated from other
Yes.
funds. So
They
it's,
are not for capital improvements.
that's what I
they are
assumed,
for
exactly.
learning.
Yeah. No, exactly,
yeah,
yeah.
we would love to, we would
Yeah.
love to,
Yeah.
if we could, but it's
Because
not.
if that was the case, you could, in theory, take ESSER funds, and if you have an
Do whatever
ongoing
you
project, do whatever you want, exactly. I
Right,
can
and
see
we
that, yeah.
can't do that. We'd be lying on an application.
Can I ask this? What were the cost savings on the lower interest and the getting the
bond.
the
That's what allowed
bond?
us to do 16 million after we had talked 12, 14, 15, because that was part of the issue. To be honest with
So
you.
that's already
I
been
could not,
applied.
absolutely, I could not have supported this project at 16 million plus at a higher level. I struggled with it at that level after we said 15.8, after we said 15.5 and those, but I'm not trying to rehash that or anything. We've experienced
I just
the
wondered
cost
if there was
savings.
that money
Yeah, absolutely,
available.
we've experienced those cost savings. I'm just looking for that path forward. The thing that concerns me is we can't look at these things in a silo. We're talking about these other appropriations, and I had mentioned that to you before, that we might have to hold some of that money to use for overages, for rentals, for things like that. Because I saw this coming. I knew this was going to be a greater expense for us. And I respect the school board's decision to make choices about expenditure of funds. But I think that also may mean, where can we find additional places to take care of some of these needs before we go back to the taxpayers to say, we're going to hold these in reserve just in case there's other projects we need to do. I think what that means is we may get to a point where we say, hey, we've got a capital project, there needs to be X done that has become emergent, and we have to have that discussion then, just as we do when something else comes up for another department within the city. But that's my proposal, putting it forward. I'm not asking you to do something that's illegal or unethical in any way, shape, or form. But I think it would be worth exploring to see if these things could be used in such a way that cover our needs and get us where we need to be before we go down another path of taking additional
I
revenue.
think we can explore a grant that we've already written and we receive based on good faith of our answers, that it's going to be used instructionally, as Anastas said. It does maybe appear that it's silo appropriate, but it's not. It's either, as you well know, capital improvements are one thing, instructional loss is completely different. And we can't slide ESSER funds into a capital project that was started before any of us knew how to spell the word pandemic.
Well, and I think what he's alluding to as well, and I will say, like Forrest, I know you've had the 1 year, but I was on the council, I have to remind everyone, 4 years. So let me remind everyone, the reason I ran is because I sat on school board and wanted this build. So I do have more questions because I sat there 4 years, which is probably longer than most of current school board. So now I'm 3 years into this. So I do have a little bit quicker questions. So I think what you're referring to is not just taking this particular fund and applying it, because no one wants anyone to do anything illegal. What we're saying, I think what you're saying, quote me if I'm quoting you, misquoting you, is we do have carryover monies within the school system. Not all schools have that. It's actually rare that schools get that carryover money. And so we're not saying do anything illegal, but maybe, you know, is there a way to use the carryover for some of this expense? The other money, that use it correctly, there's other projects in which it can be used correctly to move this project, all these projects forward. And I think it's not, you know, like when you say, well, you know, ask the taxpayers for 200 more thousand, that is a hard ask because people are still struggling and still suffering. So we're not past it.
Let me be clear on that. I didn't ask the taxpayer for $200,000. I said you would have to do it. My question was, you would have to do a tax increase for $200,000. Is that what?
No, but
And I think that is one of the sort of the crucial pieces of this puzzle that we're missing, Rob. You know, we're asking the school board to make a good faith examination of your budget. I think it's incumbent on us to also look at our budget as well and say what is the option for us. Could we come up with this $200,000 ourselves, and where could that come and at what cost? You know, what projects would we have to sacrifice ourselves? I think it's only fair if we're asking the school board to examine that we also examine our budget as well. And that's one thing that we have not heard from, that I think is really going to be very important for this conversation as we move forward.
I think the other piece, we probably need another work session in a few weeks to actually talk about what that real number is, rather than just saying $200,000, what are we really doing? Because, again, it may be 60, it may be 80, it may be 100, it may be 200. I think that's part of what we need to know.
That.
Well, would you have a meeting on July 1st,
You have a meeting on July
right?
1st
That
to
should,
talk about some of these things.
I know you won't then
Yeah, I
have
won't know
a
that-
purely clear
that
crystal
number,
ball.
But it'll be a clearer picture in terms of the likelihood of completing it in the time frame, those kinds of
Right.
things. I don't think the cost aspect will be much clearer.
But this is not money that if we don't appropriate today, that you can't continue with the project, correct?
That's right, and as I said, several of those items that are highlighted have not been spent yet.
Yeah.
I mean, the 8 months of additional trailer, that's gonna
Right.
come, you know, where are we, 6 months from now, when the first additional month is due.
Sure.
So there's certainly time to do this, but I'm trying to, this budget shows what I know today based on real things. My speculation of needing about 200,000 more is just based on the amount of time and the work that remains to be done.
It's a trend.
And
I'd much rather
and
you
let me
think-
say, I very
thinking
much
that-
appreciate the work you've done just to get us here. I know how tough this has been. I recognize construction costs are expensive. I think it's just incumbent upon us to explore every possible option for this, because truly, just to get the $16 million means there are things we're not doing in other parts of the city just to get there. And so realistically, I think to be able to look at anything else, we have to fully vet every possibility before we can go forward with
And
it.
another point you're making about carryover is some of the reason we were able to get a better rate is because we do have to have carryover, and we have been trying to build that back up so we can get better rates for these other projects. So again, like with the schools, you're not required for that. We are required. We are required in regards to trying to help with further projects, perhaps even some of these that you have on your list.
But it's the same thing on both sides.
On both
You're doing
sides,
this for the exact same reasons we are, to keep us from having to come to ask you for an $80,000 boiler, $110,000, something with.
But if it's in our kitty, we can get a better rate to help you with maybe 2 projects instead of 1 if it's in your kitty.
I think it's a challenge for us to move forward without having
A little more information, but I'm very appreciative of the information we do have, and thank you to everybody. Are there any final questions or concerns, first among council and then among school board? Naomi?
No, thank you all for providing the information. I'm sad tonight about this. Jack, I know that you are too.
We all.
Everyone, and I think that that's the universal feeling that we all have, frustration and sadness, because I know you all didn't want to come in here having to do this and ask for this money, and we certainly don't want to have to tell you no, and we are both trying to voice our frustrations over a situation where we're going to have to come to a solution, and where nobody's going to walk away entirely happy. So I'm sorry that we're having to go through this, and it's the state of the world, and it's nobody's fault. It's just what has happened, and so I appreciate everybody's efforts to work through it.
Forrest, what do you think?
I mean, pretty much just ditto to all that. You know, thank you all for the work you're doing. Hate the frustration, but let's work together to get a solution.
Well, positive thing is, even though there's some frustration going on, conversation is always good, right? Because when there's no conversation, apathy sets in, and apathy sets in, nothing moves forward. So the positive takeaway from this is that we're all passionate about the same thing. It's a matter of how do we pay for it.
Sure. Jessica?
So again, just to say, you know, it's sitting on council after sitting on the school board is difficult, because when I sat on the school board, I advocated just for the schools. And quite frankly, that was in some ways a harder task, in some ways an easier task. And so being on council, it is hard because we're playing a shell game to a certain extent. And I feel, my frustration is I feel a little bit of the shell game too. And some of this was, I feel like it was somewhat predictable from the onset. And we kind of hedged our bets on a little bit of it. And I really do, I would like to see us figure out a way to do this without having to reduce anything else from the city's budget, because we did go the max, and that's because we really truly wanted this to be the very best build, knowing that there could be some of these contingencies. So I'm frustrated too, because again, I sat on the project when it was just a little infant, just a little dream, dream of dreams, and so here we are. But it's a broader hat that we have to wear. So we've already gone to taxpayers once, and that's a concern.
And I want to thank everybody for all their hard work. I know this is not easy, and it's frustrating because you're like, we're close on a lot of things. But I think there are some ways we can work together to try to find a solution here.
I think one of the hardest things sitting in these roles is there's a perception
you support the students, you don't support the students. You support the residents, you don't support the residents. And it's never that.
Right.
It is truly how we can get there and what we can do. And I struggle because I've tried to be as transparent as possible with all this. I know you all have worked really hard to get us to a good place. And I'm appreciative of all the challenges that we face. My hope is that as we play
this out over the next few months, employment might change a little bit. Some of this big spike in prices might begin to even out a little bit, and that picture looks a little bit better. The other piece that we have as a possibility is what might come from the federal government for some infrastructure pieces and other things that we don't know. So again, while there are many unknowns, there are many discussion.
Does that sound fair to everybody? I mean, we're on schedule tonight, but we can plan that. Okay? And thank you all for all your work. Let's take
A 5-minute biology break, and then we'll get back together here.